Good late Sunday, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center as we continue to watch the tropics here. We have Hurricane Douglas out in the Pacific right now. You see this here. Some of the impacts being felt there toward Honolulu, though. The satellite imagery doesn't really tell the story that well as we kind of look in toward the radar images here. You'll be able to see that things aren't quite as bad maybe as they seem off of this. So that's some good news. We'll take off the satellite right now as we're watching this situation here. We're still watching as we look toward Texas, some rain from the depression there, tropical depression Hanna, that is down there in toward Mexico. So something that we'll get to here in a moment. But let's go ahead and pull up the Doppler radar right now in the region. As you see some wind reports, they're not too high there, the numbers as you see on the screen. So let's go ahead and switch this over now toward the Doppler radar, that live technology where you can see a really well-defined storm. But luckily, the worst that our storm here that Douglas has to offer is going north here of Honolulu. So we'll go ahead and kind of zoom on in some now. You'll be able to see what is happening. Some of the southern part here of the eye wall maybe trying to clip Oahu, but the wind energy here showing up some. So some of the worst that the storm has here, 4 parts of Oahu, moving on in here over the next little bit, but not too significant. Honolulu, for instance, they're going to miss the worst of this storm system as it's been moving a little bit further north than we were anticipating earlier on. So that's some good news. Now we will be watching as we get later on into the picture. I know we'll be looking over toward Kauai and we'll be watching out toward that region as we're going to be tracking the system here to see, because even though it's been tracking more northerly, it seems like there might be a little bit of a wobble here toward the west, and that might have a greater impact on those communities out that way. So more rural area, which is good news though. So that's something to keep in mind, as this is a population center down toward Honolulu. That's where the population's clustered at there in the state of Hawaii. So we're watching for them, but they're not getting too much there right now. I'm not expecting too much. Now we will have to watch there as some spots, just based on the topography there, we could have some issues with wind being a little bit higher. But again, not too big of a deal overall, it doesn't seem. There is a hurricane warning still in effect though, so still take it seriously. And some spots it could still be pretty nasty here as we look up here to the northern part of Oahu. But again, as we're looking, you're seeing some of these spots here just start to get into some of this accent. I'll go ahead and kind of point out some of this wind energy just to kind of reiterate what I'm talking about here. You kind of see some of these brighter colors. Now these are a little bit higher up, so not all this translating to the surface, but it'll be interesting to see some of these observations here as we're looking towards some of these spots here as we get to the northern part of Honolulu there and that county. So again, we're tracking the situation there in Oahu. We're going to be watching here as we get toward areas off toward Kauai as well. So just kind of stay tuned with that. I'll go ahead and pull up the parameters here with this system. It says that at the 5 p.m. Hawaii time advisory there, you'll be able to see what is happening according to the Central Pacific Hurricane Center. We're going to kind of dive into these statistics here a little bit better, and we do see that maximum sustained winds there, 85 miles per hour, the movement off toward the west-northwest at about 16, and that barometric pressure there going up. So that's a sign of some weakening. That's what we want to see here as well. But some of the satellite images, maybe they're showing that the storm's holding its own. So that's something that we'll be watching as we look again off toward the west. You see though the worst of the winds with the wind field even pretty much passing Honolulu by, at least. Again, some of Oahu could be clipped there by some hurricane force type conditions there, some hurricane force type conditions. So we'll be watching there. We'll be watching as we get toward Kauai as well, as the center might get a little bit closer to there. That'll be later in the night. If there's something I really see, I'll make sure to tweet it out on my Twitter account at Cloud Casey. But we're just going to keep our eyes on the situation there. We'll continue to watch. The hurricane warning does remain in effect there for Oahu and for Kauai County as well. So just kind of continue again There's still that flat footing threat if things evolve, and we'll see how the banding does set up, because it's pretty rare to have a situation like this here toward at least Honolulu. I know or toward Hawaii. Honestly, the last few years have been a little more active, but getting closer to Honolulu is a little unusual, though. This looks like it's going to spare Honolulu the worst of the impacts there. So that's the good news. Let's go ahead now and pop up some other things here that are important. Let's start talking about tropical depression Hanna that's down there in toward Mexico, but still spreading the moisture in toward Texas. This is important here, and you'll be able to see what is happening with that right now. You can still see some shower action there in toward parts of southern Texas. Not near as heavy as it was earlier, though. That's the good news, and things are improving, I think, but still adding insult to injury with any type of rain, especially right here near the border. We just need to be watching here. Rio Grande City, there's still flash flood warnings in place, so still dangerous situations here at times. This is aggravating things, but not as bad of a situation as it was as we were seeing much heavier rain, much more efficient rainfall there falling in toward those spots, and luckily we're not seeing that. We're seeing the conditions now translate more into toward Mexico, weakening overall. The system is. Now you see McAllen in there. Now they were really impacted earlier. I'll go ahead and tell you our storm total information as we're looking back here. We'll go ahead and pull that up, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. These areas in this white color here, we're getting really excessive, almost historic type numbers here. Over 15 inches estimated by the Doppler radar. Maybe some spots even a little bit more than that. Over a foot in the purple, the darker purple, and the lighter purple here, we're getting over 10 inches. So definitely an issue there toward McAllen, over there toward spots there like Sullivan City, also Weslaco getting into it as well, and north of Brownsville. I know that even in Brownsville they had a tornado, a weak tornado move through, but still caused some damage there toward Cameron County. So that was impactful. But let's get in here real quick. I know we had Mission impacted here. They had a flash flood emergency there. In addition to there being a flash flood emergency down toward Weslaco here and McAllen, even those roads there, some of them were really having big problems, and we were really tracking that situation. I know I put some stuff out early this morning about Mission. We were monitoring that situation there with the flooding as we look towards South Texas, and something that those folks will have to deal with for a while here. So we'll keep our eyes on this as the things improve there. Thoughts and prayers to everybody involved. But let's go ahead and pull up our storm mode here of the Doppler radar. We can just see the normal reflectivity, and you'll be able to see again what is happening in this area. So let me go ahead and move away from this right now. I'll go ahead and pop myself back here on camera on this late Sunday. It depends on where you're watching actually, as we're looking off toward Hawaii. It's a little bit earlier there, but I'll go ahead and put myself back on here. Again, we're watching Douglas as I've referenced. But let's talk here about our storm system Hanna a little bit more as we get toward parts of South Texas. I know yesterday this was the first landfall here of a July hurricane in the state of Texas since 2008 with Dolly. So I'm going to kind of make sure I clarify that, because I misstated that a little yesterday. Knew what was going on, but just trying to explain that sometimes it's kind of hard there without something in front of you to make sure I mention everything here in the statistics. So again, this was Texas's first July hurricane landfall since 2008 and Dolly. So I know Dolly happened here, pretty similar area here, pretty similar time frames, so of the months, and that was something that folks definitely dealing with. Maximum sustained winds there at 90 miles per hour with this storm system. With Dolly, I know we were tracking a situation there where at landfall, I think they were marking at 95 and the advisory is a category 2 at the time. But as we're looking here toward the actual data there, as we're looking as we get toward those observations, they were thinking more like 85. So this might have been a little stronger in the winds, but the pressure went a little bit lower, meaning a stronger storm overall at 967 millibars, the number there. So Something kind of intriguing, some comparisons. Now, power outage information also kind of compares, not quite as significant, I don't think, this storm system because it took its time here before it moved to some of the more populated areas. As when it first made landfall, it was in pretty rural spots there toward Kennedy County. But power outages down toward the Rio Grande Valley really tell the story here tonight. So that's something that is worth noting for sure. The spots there, I'll go ahead and see if we can get this on here. It'll take you just a second as I'm trying to get you that latest information as we refresh it here in the computer. Numbers are going down some now, which is good news. That's definitely something we want to see here. But I'll go ahead and switch this over to that computer right now, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about as the data does load on here. And we're looking at some of these different spots. You can see down here in the South Texas, Willacy County, about 6,000 customers still without power. Cameron County, about 12,000. Getting here towards some of these other spots, we're going to be seeing some of these other counties. Hidalgo's probably been the one hardest hit here, 66,000 customers or so, 67,000. And in Starr County, about 5,000. So still a lot of power outages in those areas that have really affected people. It's something you don't want to see, and with the coronavirus, it just makes things even worse here. So, again, that's a look at the power outage situation in North Texas. We'll monitor that very carefully here to see how those numbers do go down. We were over 250,000 at one point as we look back here at the information from poweroutage.us. So, I'll take that away from the screen right now. Again, interesting to look back on toward Hawaii, by the way. Power outage is really not showing up much right now. That's great news for everybody wondering about that situation. Looks like we've had a few on the board here toward Honolulu County now. Toward the south, not really measured on poweroutage.us, but wouldn't expect here based on everything. Too many power outages, but up toward Honolulu County, about 1,500 customers without power right now as we continue to watch Douglas there moving toward that region. Again, the worst of it though, missing Honolulu, but impacting parts of Oahu here as I'll kind of step out of the way and see what I'm talking about once again. So just kind of reiterating that. We'll go back here now and show you what the Doppler radar does so to everybody in this region. We'll be able to give you that imagery once again. We're watching here to see how the southern parts here impact the region. Now, we're kind of in a situation with the eye wall. I mean, you could talk about at least the core, if not the eye wall, impact in this area because of how things are structured. So, again, we're watching a very strong wind showing up on the Doppler radar technology. This will still be some area here of wind moving on in, even if it's not really exactly part of the eye wall that we're seeing with this. So something to monitor, something to track here toward the Hawaiian Islands. I know it's been a busy last few days here in the Weather Center, and we'll continue watching things here as we kind of go between storms again. We're still watching what's left there of Hanna as we go back again. I just kind of want to try to switch between these so we give you the latest information here. So here's the statistics on Hanna. Tropical depression still being tracked by the Weather Prediction Center. 30-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds. The movement off toward the west-southwest at about 7 miles an hour, and that barometric pressure up to 1,003 millibars. So weakening, but still bringing in some rain as I've been showing you here. And there's still quite a bit of rain in toward Mexico. A nasty situation down that way as we're looking in toward that country. Again, you see all the moisture around, so something that's definitely having an impact, the impact of our system being felt. So we'll be continuing to keep tabs on things, see how they recover down into the Rio Grande Valley here as we move forward in time. So I'll take that away again. We'll come back here and we'll look back at our system. And now I do want to touch on another area of interest before we wrap this update up tonight that we're going to be paying attention to as we're looking into the future. Now, an 80% chance of cyclone formation here within 48 hours. This was a wave that was coming off of Africa as we were looking back earlier in toward the week there. And now the chances have really gone up. It's probably going to be a tropical system here sooner rather than later. But the one thing about it, the models are not showing very well any type of consensus on what's happening as we're looking further into the future. So I just want you to stay tuned. Don't stress out about this situation. Just stay tuned for the latest updates as things evolve. I'll be here to give them to you because right now the models aren't sure. It could just dissipate altogether. That's one of the options on the table here. That's one of the options. The models have been hitting out more today than they have here in recent days even, but we just want to get people up to date on this. We want people to just go ahead and make sure you have that hurricane supply kit up to date this time of year. It's a good time to do it. We've already had a hurricane now hit in the U.S., so and that's something you just want to really be ready for, because that evolved so quick with Hanna there. And as we kind of move down the list, we're going to be looking here for more storms, I'm sure. I know, ironically, 6 years ago, we didn't even use the I name on the list, and we're going to be using that here at the end of July, early August, it seems, as we look in toward this hurricane season that's so active. We're not even at the peak yet. We're still over a month away, so just go ahead and be ready. I mean, maybe a storm doesn't hit us. You're prepared, though, and with the coronavirus, it'll make it even harder to prepare in a timely manner. So it's just really important to be ready, to be prepared here, to stay up to date, because things are a little bit more time sensitive here in this scenario. So let's go ahead now. We're going to look back here as we get toward Hawaii again. We'll put on some other information out that way. As we look back at the Doppler radar, you'll be able to see what is happening in that spot, so we can give you that important perspective. And you do see, again, our system here as it does track. Again, the worst of it staying north here of Honolulu and really of Oahu, but parts of Oahu probably getting clipped here by some stronger winds over the next little bit. So there's some of these spots, if you're familiar with them, just be ready there if you're watching me from this area, or if you're just watching because you have some relatives here, some interest here, you want to just make sure that they know some of the stronger winds that Douglas has to offer are moving on in. So just be prepared again here as we're looking out toward this area. Something you don't normally see here. It's kind of a complicated situation. Just looking at this off of the Hawaii radars, trying to be able to gauge exactly what is happening, because not used to tracking a situation where we're looking at islands here and with a system like this on the Doppler radar technology. But a storm here moving north of Hawaii. It doesn't look like there's going to be a landfall in Hawaii, luckily, but we'll watch it. We'll see how the impacts are being felt as we're looking toward, again, Oahu, getting up toward Kauai as well. And we're going to be watching that, of course, here as we even get into tomorrow. Well, we're going to still see some of that here on the imagery as it does start to weaken some. And we're going to be looking here as we get ahead with that chance there of that system developing as we saw it toward the Atlantic. We're still watching the impacts that are being felt toward Texas. They're going to lessen here, but the recovery process, that'll be ongoing as we're looking down towards southern Texas. So something that we'll definitely be following here in the Weather Center this week. You can tune in here tomorrow night around 6 in that 6 o'clock time frame for that full weather update. I'll be talking about the local forecast for North Florida and South Georgia here as well, so you won't want to miss it. And I'll be giving you a look there at maybe some of those rain chances staying pretty high here from early to midweek, but maybe dropping as we get later in the week. Just an early hint of what it looks like there in that forecast. For now, meteorologist Casey Cloud, I think that pretty much does it for this special report. Again, we're watching the Hurricane Douglas. We're getting near the top of the hour as they're still monitoring the situation there in toward Hawaii. And the worst of this passing this north. And we'll just be seeing how the night does evolve there again. If there's anything I need to talk about there on Twitter, I'll make sure to do that. Twitter.com/CloudCasey. I was doing that last night with Hanna after I went off, posting some things there that were important as the situation did evolve there with the flooding, with the power outages mounting in toward that area. And another thing to be aware of is high sharp in this region, very dangerous there, because that's one thing you're not seeing in a lot of spots as we're looking around the region even, but there are some spots that are getting that just based on the proximity of the storm and where it's at here. Just we're going to continue to watch it, and that pretty much does it though for now. Thanks so much for tuning in.